So thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity thanks to Mike especially for the opportunity to come and talk to you about this. We had a little bit of a conversation about Tecterra yesterday, and I had promised that we would go through a little more detail today. This is sort of a framework presentation. I'm not attempting to tell you all the details about Tecterra, but it's the intent here is to provoke a conversation that leads us to some actual actions. My understanding is the agreement, the MOU between CRCSI and Tecterra has been in place for about a year, and Mike and I had a conversation about this, saying, okay, it's probably time that we started to see some cooperation, some connections, some mutually beneficial agreements that actually come out of that. I'll tell you just a little bit about sorry, a show of hands, folks who know the story, the Tecterra story. So some folks do, so this is going to, so you can blank out and answer email for 5 minutes while I catch everybody up on this. I'm not going to read that. It's fairly grand and fairly impressive, but feel free to read through it. But I'll give you the sort of background piece to this. My part in this is that I'm a member of RIC here with CRCSI. I get to review all those fantastic proposals that come across, and I have a great deal of fun doing it. I'm also on the review team for Tecterra. I'm on their board of review, so I get to see all their exciting IP inventions and ideas come across. And for background, it is absolutely amazing how many times I pop up in the Tecterra conversation and say, wait a minute, the Australians are doing that. Don't you think you should talk to them? Well, I think that if we get past that, don't you think we should talk to them, then I've succeeded here. This is just a little bit of background. Now, that I don't remember that we in Australia set great store by the geomatics term, but Tecterra certainly does, and that's the way they speak about it. So geomatics for them covers the full breadth of what the CRCSI talks about. So there is, I would say, fairly close to 100% overlap between the research domains that have been set out for CRCSI and the research domains that Tecterra entertains. The difference, however, is that Tecterra, the way they operate is they have quite a substantial publication approach to a published approach to it. They do seminars all across Canada trying to elicit submissions. So the volume of submissions that they process in this geomatic space is quite impressive, meaning that they can pick the jewels out of those. And I'll go through 3 or 4 proposals, and the first one is number 5, the second one's number 30, and the next one's number 34, meaning that there's a whole bunch of proposals that they had to choose from to get there. Does anybody want to argue about that? It's on the slides from Tecterra. I'm not sure I believe that. I think Australia is the recognized world leader in geomatics. In Canada, there's the proposals for Tecterra are actually drawn from about 2,500 firms, from a fairly substantial business of $2.5 billion, and the Canadians are claiming 20% of the global market, which I'm inclined to agree with because of the history coming back from Roger Tomlinson and all of those GIS evolutions. I don't believe so. But then on the other hand, Canada defense spending is fairly slim. And in geomatics, it's even slimmer. So I'm not sure that discounting it by that much is very useful. There is a very strong emphasis in Canada, as there is, I believe, in Australia, on paying attention to natural resources and disaster management. You notice the first 2 on that list are natural resources and disaster management. They tend to eclipse all except health in terms of importance in Canada. And particularly since Tekterra is based in Alberta, they have a very strong emphasis on resource management and actually recovering afterwards. And there you go, the integrated resource management solution. So let's move on to have a look at the investment and grant programs. This is actually probably the key slide. What Tekterra does, the purpose of Tekterra is very much like CRCSI, is to drive towards the commercialization. And so they will spend money on helping a company that's starting to flesh out an idea. They will actually spend money that does not need to be paid back in a program to get a company started on the commercialization path. They will spend money supporting the research that gets the innovation into a commercialization path, and they'll basically nurture the process the whole way through. And there are parts of Tekterra that are set aside to nurture each of those pieces. Second part of it is HQPs, is high quality personnel. It's a very unfortunate acronym, but they have programs to actually encourage highly qualified personnel in the spatial arena, in the geomatics arena, to be hired into companies. So, for example, as an employee of DMTI Spatial, I can apply to Tekterra and say I want to hire 2 more high-quality geomatics people. They will give you money up front to encourage you to hire those people, and quite substantial money. And finally, the networking facilitation. I mentioned earlier about how this Tekterra juggernaut walks its way back and forth across Canada doing presentations. Those presentations have more purpose than just to elicit great research submissions. They are also there to push the networking between the various organizations. So let me move on to the funding programs. I'll just spend a minute or two on these ones. Okay, so working down from the top one, the key submissions that Tekterra reviews for funding, and it's the way the funding works is that it's an interest-free loan, and when you are realizing revenue from the project, then they will take a percentage of that revenue in return, and that will be offset against the investment. So there are 2 of them. There's the I&Ds and the peer-to-peer industry and peer-to-peer. They're just 2 separate categories. Sometimes that gets a bit blurred, but they're categories of the manner in which the investment is actually executed. You do, as noted there, you do have to pay it back, but as I say, you pay it back when you're actually deriving revenue from the project that was funded, and not from some other project. Actually, there isn't. There's a certain degree of reasonableness that we exercise when we're approving the projects. Typically, a $500,000 project would be ceiling. There are rules that you have to have a certain percentage of that contributed out of your own pocket, and if you're a startup, there's a certain risk. There are risk numbers involved in it as well, right? Because you want to assess the risk. You don't want to make a silly investment that's just going to go south on you. But interestingly, the funding part of it is refined after the research is approved, right? So we'll go through in the committee and go, yes, this is innovative. We see a commercialization path for it. We do believe that it will realize the money according to the sales and marketing plan that has been published. And then when we've approved it, then it goes on to the CFO, and the CFO negotiates the whole deal with him. It does. I&Ds and peer-to-peers don't have. Sorry. Yes.
How much is available really, and what's the source of the funding?
Very good question. The amount varies. So just picking a number out of the air wouldn't help a great deal here. But it's I would say roughly equivalent to what the CRCSI has to play with. Sorry, what was the second part of the question? I lost it. Oh, the source of it. The government of Alberta funds for certain projects. They obviously have an interest in having that project have some Alberta content or some benefit to Alberta. But the Canadian government also funds. But to be honest with you, from the point of view of reviewing the research, we don't really worry too much about where the funds come from. That gets sorted out down the path. And given Tectera's appetite for funding these projects, the fact that they're advertising furiously to get more projects in, and we've certainly granted more than we've denied. I would say in one session, we probably grant upwards of 10 million per session. So there's a fair bit of money changing hands here. The uni, I'm sorry, was there another question? Sorry, okay. The uni, those are few and far between. They're actually applied research. The uni ones are actually put under a fairly substantial microscope because the funds are not repayable, and it's pure investment in research. So the research really has, it gets examined very thoroughly to make sure that it's robust research, that it's actually genuinely new, and it will get turned back if I can come back and say, hey, the Australians have already done this, they've figured out how to do it. So I mentioned already the placement of HQP. As you can see, there's no payback required. The typical grant there is about 25K, but it will go up to 50K. If you hire somebody around, I think it's 90K to 100K, then you will get the 50K grant to hire that person. Not every year, obviously. Gecko is a fantastic program. This is one that I was planning to talk to Mike a little bit about. I think there's a sort of an analog with CRCSI, but in this case, this is a very well-defined plan that brings in an organization that has in mind to do this research and turn it into a real product. But it actually sets down with the organization, and they bring industry experts in as coaches. They bring business and marketing specialists in, and there's a couple of firms that they contract out to who are very adept at building robust business and marketing plans that test well and that will actually execute well. And so they will help you build a business and marketing plan from scratch before you even get funding for the project. So then, so many of the IND peer-to-peer projects will have a Gecko ahead of them. Don't ask me what it stands for, I keep forgetting. But they will have a Gecko before it, and so you can say, okay, the business and marketing plan is robust because it's already gone through Gecko. Sorry, Jack, what was that? Yes, a 25K lizard. Commercialization support services, that's actually after the fact that you've been granted the money, and that's partially refundable. You don't have to refund the whole thing. And then the final thing is that they will pay for you to attend or to press forward with your product at trade shows and conferences. These are just some of the players that are involved. I think that's a bit of an eye chart. It's fairly impressive where they are. So this is not just startups, it's fairly substantial organizations. I think you'll see Fujitsu in there somewhere. Yeah, it's right in the middle there. There's some big players in here and some small players, and I don't think there's a particular bias in the granting of the funding. So now we get to the meat of it. Before I dive into this, I'm almost there, so I wasn't watching time. I think I'm doing all right. Before I dive into this, I have with me, and I've been allowed to share with you, profiles of all of the major players that have engagement with Tecterra. So it's basically a one-sheet prospectus that says this is what the company does, this is the engagement with Tecterra, this is and this is the product they're producing. It's a huge list, and it doesn't make any sense for me to go through it right here. But offline, I'm happy to go through those. And as a footnote to that, Mike, your lovely tool that you put up there, I think is the basis for the solution of the problem that we're trying to solve here. Because all of those companies could go across, actually vertically down one side, and you could show the potential engagements right with your companies. So you could actually have a second. I think that would be a brilliant way of going about this, because the profiles are all there. So anyway, that might be a great way to go about this. These are the areas of focus, and I would hasten to add that although these are particular focus areas, if you go in there with something that says, I want to invent spatial intelligence as a parallel to business intelligence, and I want to use multidimensional cubes with spatial operators, not in any of those, but they will without a doubt entertain that. So although these are focus points, it doesn't eliminate funding in other areas. The ones that I've seen in the last little while that have been really compelling from an innovation perspective are actually the last ones, the airborne remote sensing packages. Because in Alberta, there's pipelines, masses of oil pipelines everywhere, and so there've been several projects which involve automated flying over the pipelines. James isn't here? No. Automated flying over the pipelines with the same recovery pattern that James has been talking about, where you come back and fly over something that you've spotted as suspicious. So cool stuff. And application areas of focus. Obviously in Alberta, the resource sector is a big player, but it's resources also across all of Canada. So forest inventory, wildfire management, so that there's a connection. And particularly there's some biomass ones underneath the agriculture production efficiencies. And of course, clean energy. Okay, and then the last slide, suggested ways to work together. Before I came here, I was thinking about ways to make this work, and I think the engagement doesn't have to be some massive piece of work that we put in place. I think if we can find a single connection, let's say it's something to do with MEMS, or let's say it's something to do with James's airborne scanners, or maybe it's, if we can find one place where the connection works, then we can sort of grow it from there. But then I saw Mike's tool, and it seems like maybe we can grow a few areas simultaneously rather than just one area. So this is a key step. What's the technology or application overlap that we could play with? This is a great one. Canadian companies, I can vouch for this, that Tecterra has been encouraging Canadian companies to reach out, and Australia is a wonderful place for them to reach out to, because the problem domain is so similar. GH&D is here? Yes. We've already talked a little bit about an opportunity for GH&D's just acquired a Canadian company. So there's a wonderful opportunity for a connection. And I'm happy to, I'll add to this point, I'm happy to facilitate if you have ideas about things that you'd like to look into Tecterra from that standpoint. I would be more than delighted to take them and couch them appropriately for Tecterra to pay attention to. And I have volunteered with Tecterra to bring ideas that they may have back to CRCSI. So I'm quite willing to play both sides of that and see if I can help a little bit. I don't want to be the I don't want to be the barrier to success, but if I can expedite it by moving things back and forth, then I'm more than happy to do that. And that's about it.